The autumn sunlight filtered through the maple trees lining Maple Grove High School's courtyard, casting a golden amber glow across the campus. Emma Chen stood by the red brick wall, her navy blue uniform crisp against the weathered bricks, dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her delicate fingers traced the edge of a well-worn sketchbook, its pages ruffling slightly in the cool October breeze. Around her, leaves pirouetted through the air like nature's confetti, some landing on the pages of her open sketchbook, where intricate drawings of impossible machines and fantastic creatures danced across the paper. She watched as a particularly vibrant red maple leaf settled beside her latest creation, a detailed sketch of what appeared to be a bicycle that could fold into a pocket-sized cube. The corner of her mouth twitched upward as she brushed the leaf aside, revealing more of her imaginative work. Jake Rodriguez froze mid-stride, his worn messenger bag sliding off his shoulder unnoticed. There was something about the way she stood there, completely absorbed in her sketchbook, that made time feel like it was moving through honey. The golden light caught the subtle highlights in her dark hair, and for a moment, he could have sworn he saw fragments of starlight dancing in the strands. Her pencil moved across the paper with such certainty, such purpose, that Jake found himself wondering what worlds were flowing from her fingertips. He'd always thought the brick wall by the maple trees was just another boring corner of Maple Grove High, but she somehow transformed it into something else entirely, like a portal to somewhere extraordinary. Every few seconds, she'd tilt her head slightly, and Jake noticed how her eyes seemed to catch impossible colors in the autumn light. Not just brown, but amber and gold, and something else he couldn't quite name, like the color you might see in the heart of a nebula, if you could ever get close enough to one. His fingers itched to reach for his phone and check if his quantum anomaly detection app was picking up any readings. Because surely this girl wasn't just sketching. She was bending reality itself with each stroke of her pencil. The rational part of his brain tried to remind him that he was just standing there, staring like an idiot. But rationality seemed like a distant concept when every detail about her seemed to defy the ordinary laws of the universe. And when a slight breeze lifted a page of her sketchbook, revealing what looked like blueprints for something that couldn't possibly exist in three-dimensional space, Jake knew he was absolutely, irrevocably done for. Jake took an uncertain step forward, his mind racing through 1,000 different ways to start a conversation. Each scenario his brain conjured seemed more impossible than the last, much like the mysterious drawings he'd glimpsed in her sketchbook. He was so lost in contemplation that he completely missed the large purple recycling bin directly in his path. The collision was spectacular in its gracelessness. Jake's feet tangled with the bin's base, sending him stumbling forward in a pinwheeling dance of flailing limbs and spatial confusion. His messenger bag chose that exact moment to complete its earlier attempted escape, launching itself through the air like a leather meteor. The contents exploded outward in a trajectory that would have made a physics teacher weep, if they could have made sense of it at all. His prized collection of quantum frequency meters scattered across the courtyard, beeping and whirring in protest. One particular device, his favorite prototype, skittered across the concrete directly toward Emma's feet, emitting a series of increasingly alarmed chirps that sounded suspiciously like a distressed R2-D2 having an existential crisis. Emma looked up from her sketchbook just in time to witness Jake's final, desperate attempt to regain his balance, a maneuver that involved an impromptu interpretive dance with the recycling bin. Their eyes met at the precise moment Jake achieved what he would later describe as peak mortification, sprawled on the ground with one leg still somehow tangled in the bin's embrace. "I don't think the bin was ready for that level of commitment," Emma said, her voice carrying notes of both amusement and genuine concern. She bent down to retrieve the still chirping device, which had begun to pulse with a soft blue light the moment it came to rest near her shoes. Though I have to admit, that was probably the most creative way anyone's ever introduced themselves to me. Emma turned the chirping device over in her hands, her eyes widening as the blue pulsing light began to synchronize with the subtle glow emanating from beneath the pages of her sketchbook. "This is fascinating," she murmured. "I've never seen anything quite like it. Well, except in my dreams." Jake scrambled to his feet, attempting to smooth his rumpled shirt while simultaneously trying to process the impossible interaction between his quantum frequency meter and Emma's seemingly ordinary sketchbook. "That's, just a prototype. It's supposed to detect unusual energy signatures, but it's never reacted like this before." "Energy signatures?" Emma's fingers traced the edge of her sketchbook thoughtfully. Like the ones that appear every autumn equinox? I've been drawing them for months. She hesitated before opening her sketchbook, revealing pages filled with intricate patterns that perfectly match the wavelength displays on Jake's meter. You can see them? Jake's voice cracked with excitement. I thought I was the only one who… Wait, is that the quantum interference pattern I recorded last week near the old observatory? Emma flipped through her sketches, each page revealing more impossible coincidences. The shimmering lights that look like inverse aurora borealis, they show up every Thursday at exactly 3:47 p.m. I thought I was going crazy, so I started drawing them to prove to myself they were real. Thursday at 3:47, Jake echoed, pulling out another beeping device from his scattered collection. That's when my readings spike. I've been trying to calculate the source for months, but the mathematical models keep suggesting impossible things. Like a door? Emma asked quietly, turning her sketchbook to reveal a detailed drawing of a crystalline archway suspended in midair, geometric patterns swirling around its edges. Because I've been seeing this in the same spot, but it only appears for exactly 12 seconds. Jake stared at the drawing, his heart racing. The architecture of the arch matched his theoretical calculations perfectly, down to the last decimal point. This is incredible. You've managed to capture exactly what my equations predicted, but I never thought… the probability of finding someone else who could see what everyone else seems to miss. Emma finished his sentence, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Maybe it's not as improbable as you think. As if responding to their shared revelation, a soft humming filled the air around them. Emma and Jake looked up simultaneously to see a shimmer in the space between the maple trees, like heat waves rising from summer asphalt, except these ripples moved horizontally, defying physics itself. Do you see that? They asked in perfect unison, then turned to each other with matching expressions of wonder and relief. The phenomenon grew more distinct, painting the autumn air with prismatic fractals that spiraled and danced. Emma's hand moved automatically, her pencil flying across a fresh page of her sketchbook, while Jake frantically adjusted dials on his quantum frequency meter. The device's readings matched the exact pattern Emma was drawing, creating a perfect synchronicity between art and science. The frequencies are multiplying exponentially, Jake whispered, his eyes darting between his meter and the ethereal display. It's like they're responding to our presence, to our awareness of them, Emma nodded, her pencil never stopping. The patterns are different this time, more complex, more deliberate, like they're trying to communicate. Her sketch captured impossible geometries that somehow made perfect sense, mathematical poetry written in light and shadow. The air between them crackled with an energy that had nothing to do with the supernatural display above. Their shoulders touched as they huddled over their respective tools, her sketchbook and his instruments, each translation of the phenomenon complementing the other in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The display lasted exactly 17 seconds before fading away, leaving behind a silence heavy with possibilities. Emma's completed sketch perfectly matched the quantum signature recorded on Jake's meter, down to the smallest fluctuation. They stared at the evidence in their hands, then at each other, both understanding that this shared moment had irrevocably changed everything. We're the only ones who saw that, aren't we? Emma asked softly, though she already knew the answer. Around them, students continued their lunch break, completely oblivious to the impossible event that had just occurred. Yeah, Jake replied, still processing the implications of what they'd witnessed together. But maybe that's exactly how it's supposed to be. The golden light had shifted, painting longer shadows across the courtyard as the lunch period drew to a close. Emma carefully closed her sketchbook, her fingers lingering on its worn cover. The quantum frequency meter in Jake's hand gave one final quiet beep before falling silent. Their eyes met again, and the same electricity that had charged the air moments ago sparked between them. 1,000 questions danced on the tip of Jake's tongue, but he couldn't voice a single one. Instead, he watched as Emma tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, her other hand clutching the sketchbook to her chest like a shield. I should probably get to class, Emma said, though she made no move to leave. The autumn breeze carried the scent of maple leaves and possibility between them. Jake nodded, his hand nervously fiddling with the dials of his meter. Yeah, me too. Advanced physics with Dr. Stevens. He paused, watching as a knowing smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. The same smile that had appeared when they'd both seen the impossible. I mean, unless... The bell rang, cutting through the moment like a knife through silk. Around them, students began hurrying to their next classes. But time seemed to slow in their little bubble of shared understanding. Emma took 2 steps backward, her eyes never leaving his before turning away. Jake stood rooted to the spot, watching her disappear into the crowd, knowing with absolute certainty that this was only the beginning.